The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mix of languages, clicks, and telepathic whispers as representatives from across the known galaxy gathered for what many considered a routine military assessment. Admiral Zexter of the Hegemony Navy stood at the central podium, his four arms gesturing dismissively at the holographic display showing various species' military capabilities. "The humans," he announced with barely concealed amusement, "have requested membership in our Galactic Defense Alliance." A ripple of laughter echoed through the chamber. The Korthak delegation's insected mandibles clicked in what passed for their version of chuckling, while the crystalline Velnari chimed in harmonious mockery. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the designated human section, her jaw clenched as she watched her species become the subject of galactic ridicule. Beside her, General Marcus Torres maintained his stoic expression, though his knuckles had turned white where he gripped his data pad. "Their physical specifications are laughable," continued Admiral Zexter, manipulating the hologram to display human anatomical data. "Average height of 1.7 meters, single cardiovascular system, no natural armor plating, no energy projection capabilities, and they require constant atmospheric support. Their bone density is adequate at best, and their muscle fiber composition suggests they would struggle against even our maintenance drones." The Thrakari ambassador, a bear-like creature standing nearly 3 meters tall, rumbled his agreement. "My species has encountered humans before. They flee at the first sign of real combat. Their ships are primitive, their weapons ineffective against proper shielding." Sarah stood slowly, her movement drawing attention across the massive chamber. The conversations died down as delegates turned to observe the small human figure. "Permission to address the council," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. Zexter's upper arms crossed while his lower ones gestured impatiently. "Very well, human. Defend your species' capabilities if you can." "Honored delegates," Sarah began, walking to the center of the chamber, "you judge us by our physical limitations without understanding what drives us. You see weak bones and soft skin where we see adaptation and resilience. You count our single heart as a weakness where we see the engine of determination." She activated her personal display unit, showing footage from human conflicts throughout history. "We are not the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species seeking alliance membership, but we are the only species that has never known peace." The chamber fell silent as images of human warfare played across the holographic displays. Ancient battles with swords and shields transitioned to mechanized warfare, then to the devastating conflicts that had marked humanity's expansion into space. "Every generation of humans has known conflict," Sarah continued. "We have fought each other for resources, territory, ideology, and sometimes simply because we disagreed about the right way to live. We have turned warfare into an art form, studying it, refining it, perfecting it across millennia." The Velnari delegate's crystalline form shimmered nervously. Primitive violence hardly qualifies as military sophistication. "You misunderstand," General Torres said, rising to join Sarah. "We don't fight because we're primitive. We fight because we understand that sometimes violence is the only language that aggressors comprehend. Every human child learns military history not as abstract study, but as family legacy. My grandfather fought in the Solar Wars, my father in the Martian Independence conflict, and I've seen action in 17 separate engagements during our expansion." Torres activated his own display, showing human military doctrine. "We study failure as intensively as we study victory. Every defeat teaches us something new about warfare, about adaptation, about survival. We analyze our enemies not just to defeat them, but to understand how they think, how they plan, how they can be broken." The Korthak delegation shifted uneasily in their chitinous shells. Their species had evolved from hive-minded insects, and the concept of individual tactical thinking was foreign to them. "Our weakness," Sarah said, "is actually our strength. Because we are fragile, we have learned to be smart. Because we are outnumbered by every other species we've encountered, we have learned to be efficient. Because we cannot regenerate lost limbs like the Thrakari or share consciousness like the Korthak, we have learned to be ruthless." She gestured to the display, now showing human technological innovations. "Our ships may seem primitive to you, but they're designed by engineers who understand that every battle might be their last. Our weapons may lack the raw power of hegemony plasma cannons, but they're built by people who know that missed shots mean dead friends. Our armor may not have the integrated shields of Velnari crystal suits, but it's crafted by those who have seen what happens when protection fails. Admiral Zexter's confidence began to waver as he studied the human military data more carefully. The numbers were indeed lower than those of other Alliance species, but there was something unsettling about the tactical formations, the strategic planning documents, the way human forces seemed to anticipate and counter every possible scenario. "You speak of theory," rumbled the Thrakari ambassador, "but theory means nothing when facing the Devourers." The mention of the Devourers brought a chill to the chamber. This ancient enemy had been pushing against galactic civilization's borders for decades, their biomechanical ships consuming entire star systems. No species had successfully repelled a major Devourer incursion alone. "The Devourers," Sarah acknowledged, "represent exactly the kind of threat that validates our approach to warfare. They're not just another enemy to be defeated through superior firepower or technology. They're an existential threat that requires complete dedication, tactical flexibility, and the willingness to make whatever sacrifices are necessary." General Torres pulled up strategic assessments of previous Devourer encounters. Every species that has faced them has relied on their natural advantages. The Korthak used overwhelming numbers, the Thrakari used brute force, the Velnari used their energy manipulation abilities. All suffered devastating losses because they fought the way they were comfortable fighting, not the way the situation demanded. "And you believe humans would do better?" asked the Velnari delegate, their form flickering between colors that indicated skepticism and curiosity. "We believe," Sarah said firmly, "that humans would adapt. We would study their tactics, identify their weaknesses, and develop strategies specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. We wouldn't rely on being stronger or tougher or more advanced. We would rely on being smarter, more flexible, and more determined than they expect." The chamber erupted in debate as delegates argued among themselves. Some dismissed human claims as arrogance, while others found themselves disturbed by the implications of a species that had literally weaponized adaptation. Admiral Zexter called for order with his ceremonial staff. "The Council will take your species application under advisement. However, given the unconventional nature of human military philosophy, we propose a trial period. There is a minor Devourer incursion currently threatening the Outer Rim colonies in the Epsilon sector, if humanity can demonstrate its capabilities there." "We accept," Sarah said immediately, cutting off the Admiral's conditions. "You haven't heard the terms yet," Zexter protested. "We accept whatever terms you propose," Torres confirmed. "Give us the coordinates and timeline, we'll handle the rest." As the session concluded and delegates began filing out, conversations buzzed with mixture of anticipation and concern. The consensus among most species was that humanity would provide an interesting spectacle before being inevitably crushed by Devourer forces. But a few observant delegates noted something troubling in the humans' confidence. It wasn't the bravado of inexperienced warriors or the desperation of a species seeking to prove itself. It was the calm certainty of predators who had finally found worthy prey. In their private transport back to the human embassy, Sarah and Marcus reviewed the intelligence reports on Devourer tactics and technology. "They're making the same mistake everyone makes," Marcus observed. "They think because we're physically weaker, we must be militarily inferior." Sarah nodded, already sketching preliminary battle plans on her tablet. "The Devourers have been fighting the same way for centuries because it keeps working. Overwhelming biomechanical superiority, swarm tactics, consumption of resources to fuel further expansion. Every species they've faced has tried to match them in conventional terms." "Which is exactly why they keep winning," Marcus agreed. "But conventional warfare isn't what humans do best." "No," Sarah smiled grimly. "What we do best is figure out how to kill things that everyone else thinks are unkillable. And we're about to remind the galaxy why that's a useful skill to have around." As their transport approached the human embassy, both officers were already deep in planning mode, considering logistics, personnel requirements, and tactical innovations that would be needed for the coming engagement. Neither doubted that humanity would succeed in the trial, but both understood that success would bring its own complications. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a significant difference between being weak and being underestimated. And for the first time in centuries, the Devourers were about to face an enemy that viewed their own apparent weakness not as a limitation to overcome, but as a weapon to be wielded. The trial in the Epsilon sector would either validate humanity's place in the galactic community or serve as an expensive lesson about the dangers of overconfidence. But as Sarah reviewed the tactical data one more time, she found herself almost feeling sorry for the Devourers. Almost. After all, they had no idea what was coming for them. The mining colony on Kepler 442b had been humanity's home for 3 generations. What started as a simple extraction operation had grown into a thriving community of 50,000 people, complete with schools, hospitals, and the kind of deep roots that only developed when families had invested their entire lives in making a place home. Now the Devourers had come for it. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the colony's emergency command center, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Devourer fleet had emerged from hyperspace 6 hours ago, a writhing mass of organic ships that defied conventional military classification. They moved like living creatures because, in many ways, they were. Estimated time until the main force reaches orbital approach, she asked her communications officer. 18 hours, Captain, Lieutenant Park replied. But the advanced scouts are already engaging our outer defense platforms. Through the reinforced windows, Elena could see flashes of weapons fire in the distant sky as automated defense systems fought their losing battle against Devourer bioships. The colony's shields were holding for now, but everyone knew they wouldn't last long against a sustained assault. Any word from the relief fleet? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. The nearest Galactic Defense Alliance force is 4 days out, Park confirmed. They're sending everything they can, but 4 days might as well be 4 years when facing a Devourer incursion. Elena had studied the tactical reports from previous attacks. The Devourers didn't just destroy colonies. They consumed them, breaking down matter at the molecular level to fuel their fleet's growth. Within days, there would be nothing left of Kepler 442b except empty space and traumatic memories. Captain, called Sergeant Martinez from the sensor station, I'm picking up a new hyperspace signature. Single ship approaching fast. Elena frowned. The evacuation ships had already departed with the non-essential personnel, and no one else was supposed to be coming. Classification. Unknown design, it's... Wait. Martinez paused, his face lighting up with surprise. Captain, they're broadcasting human identification codes. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a compact bridge with a crew of 6 humans in unfamiliar dark gray uniforms. The woman in the command chair had short black hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm confidence that came from extensive combat experience. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution, the woman said. We're here to assist with your Devourer problem. Elena stared at the screen. Commander, with all due respect, you're flying a single ship against a Devourer fleet, even if it's the most advanced vessel humanity has ever built. It's not, Sarah interrupted with a slight smile. The Retribution is actually one of our older designs, but it's not the ship that matters, Captain. It's what we're planning to do with it. I don't understand. Sarah's expression turned serious. Captain Vasquez, how much do you know about human military doctrine? The basics. We're adaptable, we study our enemies, we think tactically rather than relying on brute force. That's part of it, Sarah agreed. But there's something else. Something we learned during our expansion into space that most species never had to figure out. We learned how to fight when defeat means extinction. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Every human colony existed on the edge of survival, separated from Earth by vast distances and limited resources. Unlike established galactic civilizations with multiple homeworlds and vast populations, humanity had learned to fight as if every battle was their last. Commander, what exactly are you proposing? We're going to do something that no species has tried before, Sarah explained. Instead of meeting the Devourers in conventional battle, we're going to turn their own strengths against them. The tactical display updated to show the Retribution's position relative to the Devourer fleet. The human ship was tiny compared to the massive biovessels, like a minnow swimming among whales. The Devourers consume matter to fuel their expansion, Sarah continued. They've evolved to break down and absorb any material they encounter. Their ships are living organisms that grow stronger by devouring their enemies' resources. Which is why they're nearly impossible to defeat, Alina pointed out. Exactly. But evolution always creates vulnerabilities alongside advantages. The devourers are so efficient at consuming and processing matter that they've never learned to be selective about what they absorb. Alina began to understand the implications. You're going to feed them something they can't digest. Better than that, Sarah smiled grimly. We're going to feed them something that will consume them from the inside out. The Retribution began moving toward the Devourer fleet, its course seemingly suicidal. Alina watched in fascination as the small human ship approached the massive biovessels without firing a single shot. Commander, what's your ship carrying? Nanites, Sarah replied simply. Self-replicating, adaptive nanites designed specifically to interface with biological systems. They're programmed to mimic nutritious matter until they're absorbed by devourer bioships, then activate and begin converting the ship's own biological matter into more nanites. Alina's eyes widened. That's biological warfare on an unprecedented scale. It's not biological warfare, Sarah corrected. It's technological warfare using biological vectors. The nanites aren't living organisms. They're sophisticated machines designed to exploit the Devourer's own evolutionary advantages. On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet began responding to the Retribution's approach. Smaller bioships peeled off from the main formation, moving to intercept the human vessel. Their movements were fluid and organic, like antibodies responding to an infection. They're taking the bait, observed Lieutenant Park. Of course they are, Sarah said. To them, we look like easy prey, a single small ship that they can consume quickly and efficiently. The first Devourer bioship reached the Retribution and began the consumption process. Alina watched in horrified fascination as organic tendrils emerged from the alien vessel, wrapping around the human ship and beginning to dissolve its hull. Commander, your ship is exactly where it needs to be, Sarah replied calmly. The nanites are integrated throughout the Retribution's structure. As the Devourers break down our ship, they're absorbing millions of dormant nanites along with the raw materials. The process continued for several minutes as more Devourer ships joined the feeding frenzy. The Retribution was systematically dismantled and absorbed, its crew presumably killed in the process. Alina felt sick watching the destruction of the human ship and its brave crew. Then something changed. The Devourer ship that had consumed the Retribution began to shudder. Its organic hull rippled with unnatural movements as something spread through its biological systems. Within minutes, sections of the ship began to dissolve as the nanites activated and started their programmed function. Holy, Martinez breathed from his station. Captain, the Devourer ship is coming apart. More ships began showing similar symptoms as the nanites spread through the fleet. The Devourer's own biological networking systems, evolved to share resources and coordinate attacks, became the vector for their destruction. Nanites passed from ship to ship through the organic connections, spreading like a technological plague through the entire fleet. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Ironclad, a new voice announced over the communications channel. Beginning second phase of the operation. Alina looked up in surprise as dozens of human ships dropped out of hyperspace around the colony. Unlike the Retribution, these vessels were clearly built for war, bristling with weapons and armor that spoke of hard-learned lessons from conflicts across human space. Commander Chen, this is Morrison. Package delivered successfully. Targets are compromised and ready for cleanup. Alina realized with a start that Sarah Chen was still alive. The crew of the Retribution had somehow escaped their ship before its sacrifice. Captain Vasquez, Sarah's voice came through the colony's communications system. This is Commander Chen. We've transferred to the Ironclad. The nanites have done their work, but we need to finish the job before any Devourer ships escape to spread warnings about our tactics. The human fleet moved with precision born of extensive training and combat experience. Their ships weren't individually superior to Devourer biovessels, but they fought with tactical coordination that the organic fleet couldn't match. Each human captain seemed to know exactly where their colleagues would be, what targets to prioritize, how to maximize their collective firepower. But more than tactical superiority, Alina witnessed something she'd never seen before. Humans fighting with the knowledge that failure meant the death of everything they cared about. Every shot was placed with deadly accuracy, every maneuver calculated for maximum effect. There was no waste, no hesitation, no mercy. The Devourer fleet, weakened by the nanites consuming their ships from within, found themselves facing an enemy that fought like cornered animals. But these weren't desperate creatures lashing out in fear. They were apex predators who had turned desperation into a weapon. Multiple Devourer ships attempting to break off and retreat, reported Morrison. Pursuit squadrons, you are authorized to engage. Do not let any escape. Alina watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. The human ships pursued fleeing Devourers with relentless efficiency, running down bioships that should have been faster and more maneuverable. Human pilots pushed their vessels beyond safe operational limits, trading mechanical stress for tactical advantage. One Devourer ship, larger than the others and apparently serving as the fleet's command vessel, made a desperate attempt to reach hyperspace. Human fighters swarmed around it, their weapons targeting not the ship's armor but specific biological systems that controlled its faster-than-light capabilities. The bioship shuddered to a halt just short of its escape vector, its hyperspace organs disabled by precisely targeted fire. Human bombers moved in for the kill, their weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Devourer biology. Last target eliminated, Morrison reported. All Devourer ships destroyed, colony is secure. Alina stared at the tactical display, hardly believing what she'd witnessed. An entire Devourer fleet, the kind of force that had terrorized galactic civilization for generations, had been completely annihilated by a human task force in less than 6 hours. Commander Chen, Alina called out, how is this possible? The reports said humans were physically weak, technologically inferior. We are, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. Individually, any member of my crew would lose a physical contest with almost any other sapient species. Our ships aren't as advanced as hegemony vessels or as powerful as Thrakari dreadnoughts. Then how did you do this? Because we understand something that other species don't, Sarah explained. War isn't about being the strongest or having the best weapons. War is about applying force where your enemy is weakest while protecting yourself where you are most vulnerable. It's about adaptation, innovation, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Alina looked out at the debris field that had once been a Devourer fleet. The nanites are just one tool among many, Sarah confirmed. We've been preparing for this confrontation since we first learned about the Devourers. We studied their biology, their tactics, their psychology. We identified their strengths and figured out how to turn those strengths into weaknesses. And if the nanites hadn't worked, then we would have tried something else, Sarah said simply. That's what humans do, Captain. We adapt, we overcome, we survive. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Alina found herself looking at her own people with new eyes. The colonists who emerged from their shelters weren't just grateful civilians. They were humans who had just witnessed their species' first major victory against a galactic-level threat. But Alina suspected this was only the beginning. Word of humanity's success would spread throughout the galaxy, changing how every species viewed the small, weak newcomers who had just accomplished what the mighty Galactic Defense Alliance had never managed. The Ironclad Legion had made its statement. Now the galaxy would have to decide how to respond. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in a state of barely controlled chaos. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the great chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of alarm, outrage, and disbelief. At the center of it all, Admiral Zexter stood rigid with shock as he reviewed the battle reports from the Epsilon sector for the third time. The entire Devourer fleet was destroyed, he announced, his 4 arms trembling slightly. Complete elimination. No survivors, no escape pods, no bioships limping away to regenerate. The humans achieved total tactical victory in under 6 hours. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. The Velnari delegation's crystalline forms flickered through colors indicating profound confusion and fear. The Korthak swarm representatives clicked their mandibles in agitated patterns, while the massive Thrakari ambassador growled low in his throat. This is impossible, rumbled the Thrakari. My species has fought the Devourers for 2 centuries. They cannot be completely eliminated. Their bioships regenerate, their fleets adapt, their surviving units learn from defeat. That, said a calm human voice from the chamber's entrance, assumes any units survive to learn. All attention turned to see Commander Sarah Chen walking into the chamber. flanked by General Tors and a third human in the dark gray uniform of what the galaxy was already learning to call the Ironclad Legion. The new arrival was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that held the weight of decades of command decisions. "This is Admiral Helena Cross," Sarah announced, "Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces and architect of our Devourer Elimination Protocol." Admiral Cross stepped forward, her presence commanding attention despite her relatively small stature. "Honored delegates, you seem disturbed by our success in the Epsilon sector. Perhaps you would prefer that the colony had fallen and 50,000 civilians had been consumed." "That's not the issue," Admiral Zexter protested, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "The issue is how you achieved this victory. Our intelligence reports indicate you used some form of technological plague against the Devourer fleet." "We used adaptive nanites to exploit a biological vulnerability," Cross confirmed without hesitation. "The nanites were specifically designed to target Devourer bioships and were deployed through sacrificial delivery to ensure maximum integration with enemy systems." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. The Velnari delegate's form shifted to deep red hues indicating extreme distress. "You created a weapon that consumes living tissue. Do you understand the implications of what you've done?" "I understand exactly what we've done," Cross replied coolly. "We developed a targeted solution to a specific threat. The nanites are programmed to function only against Devourer biotechnology. They cannot affect any other known biological systems." "But the precedent," pressed the Korthak representative, their hive-mind consciousness clearly agitated by the concept of technological infection. "You have proven that such weapons can be created. What prevents you from developing similar weapons against other species?" Cross smiled thinly. "Nothing prevents us from developing such weapons, just as nothing prevents any of your species from developing planet-killing superweapons or consciousness-disrupting technologies. The difference is that we developed our weapon in response to an existential threat, not as a tool of aggression." General Tors activated a holographic display showing the tactical progression of the Epsilon sector engagement. "The Devourers have been expanding for centuries because every species that faced them fought conventionally. Superior firepower, defensive formations, gradual retreat while calling for reinforcements. Every single time." The display showed previous Devourer engagements, the familiar pattern of initial resistance followed by inevitable consumption as bioships overwhelmed conventional defenses. "Humans approached the problem differently," Tors continued. "We assumed from the beginning that we couldn't win through conventional means, so we studied our enemy until we understood them better than they understood themselves." "You studied them by dissecting captured bioships," accused the Thrakari ambassador. "Our intelligence reports indicate humans have been conducting biological experiments on Devourer specimens for months." "Guilty as charged," Admiral Cross said without remorse. "We captured several scout bioships during border skirmishes and subjected them to extensive analysis. We mapped their biological systems, identified their metabolic processes, tested their responses to various stimuli. We learned everything we could about how they function." Sarah stepped forward. "Every species that has faced the Devourers tried to destroy them through external force. Bigger guns, stronger shields, more ships. But the Devourers evolved to counter external threats. They never evolved defenses against threats that originated from within their own biological processes." The implications were sinking in among the delegates. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had revolutionized the entire concept of warfare against biological opponents. "The nanites," Cross explained, "were designed through computational biology to mimic the molecular structure of nutrients that Devourer bioships actively seek to absorb. Once integrated into their systems, the nanites activated and began converting biological matter into more nanites, creating an exponential cascade that consumed the ships from within." "And the sacrificial delivery?" asked the Velnari delegate, their colors now cycling through patterns indicating deep analytical thought. "The UES Retribution was a purpose-built delivery system," Sarah explained. "The ship itself was constructed with nanites integrated throughout its structure. When the Devourers consumed it, they unknowingly infected their entire fleet." "The crew," Admiral Zexter said suddenly. "The crew of the Retribution. Our sensors indicated they died during the consumption process." Did they? Cross asked mildly. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the implications. Sarah smiled grimly. The consumption process took 47 minutes. The crew evacuated through specially designed escape pods that mimicked biological matter and were absorbed along with the ship. The pods protected the crew until they could be retrieved by the main fleet. You planned for your own ship to be consumed, the Thrakari ambassador said in amazement. You designed your entire strategy around the assumption that you would lose the initial engagement. We designed our strategy around turning apparent defeat into certain victory, General Torres corrected. That's what humans do. We take our disadvantages and weaponize them. Admiral Cross activated a new display showing human military doctrine. Other species fight from positions of strength. They use their natural advantages to overwhelm their enemies. Humans fight from positions of apparent weakness, allowing our enemies to think they're winning until it's too late. The display showed human tactical manuals, training scenarios, and strategic analyses. Unlike other species' military documents, human materials focused heavily on asymmetric warfare, unconventional tactics, and strategies for defeating superior forces. Your species glorifies defeat, observed the Korthak representative with obvious disturbance. Our species learns from defeat, Cross corrected. Every human military academy requires intensive study of our greatest losses. We analyze what went wrong, why conventional approaches failed, and how similar situations could be handled differently. But this creates a fundamental problem, Admiral Zexter said, his voice taking on an edge of concern. If humans approach every conflict with the assumption that conventional methods will fail, and if you consistently develop unconventional solutions, then we become unpredictable, Cross finished. Yes, that's rather the point. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation as delegates began to grasp the implications of humanity's approach to warfare. A species that could consistently develop unexpected solutions to military problems was not just a valuable ally. It was also a potentially terrifying enemy. There is another matter, the Velnari delegate said, their form shifting to deep blue hues indicating formal concern. The psychological impact of your victory. Across the galaxy, populations are beginning to view humans differently, some with admiration, others with fear. And some, added the Thrakari ambassador grimly, with opportunistic interest. There are species that would pay handsomely for human tactical expertise or human weapons technology. Cross nodded. We're aware of the shifting political landscape. Several minor powers have already approached us about military consultation contracts. And yes, we know that some groups are considering whether human military capabilities pose a threat to galactic stability. So what happens now? Admiral Zexter asked. Do we welcome humanity into the Galactic Defense Alliance as planned? Do we acknowledge that a species we dismissed as weak has proven more effective against the Devourers than any other civilization? Or do we treat humans as a potential threat that needs to be contained? Cross looked around the chamber, studying the faces and forms of representatives from dozens of species. That's your choice to make. But understand this. Humanity didn't develop these capabilities to threaten other species. We developed them because we've never had the luxury of assuming someone else would protect us. Every human colony, every human ship, every human settlement exists in a state of potential siege, Sarah added. We learned to fight like cornered animals because, frankly, that's what we are. We're the newest species in galactic civilization, the smallest population, the least established power. If we didn't learn to be dangerous, we wouldn't survive. General Torres stepped forward. The question isn't whether humans are dangerous. Every species capable of spaceflight is dangerous. The question is whether we're dangerous to our allies or only to our enemies. The chamber fell quiet as delegates considered the choice before them. The humans had proven their capabilities beyond any doubt, but they had also revealed a mindset that was fundamentally different from established galactic powers. They thought about warfare not as an extension of politics or competition, but as a matter of survival. There will be a vote, Admiral Zexter announced finally. The Council will decide whether to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance. And if the vote fails, Cross asked, then humanity will remain outside the Alliance structure, Zexter replied. Free to operate independently, but without the protection or support of established galactic powers. Cross smiled. Admiral, with respect, we've been operating without protection or support for our entire existence. That's exactly why we learned to be so effective at protecting ourselves. As the session concluded and delegates filed out to consider their positions, conversations hummed with speculation and concern. The humans had accomplished something unprecedented, but in doing so they had revealed capabilities that challenged the existing galactic order. Some species saw potential allies who could help defend against future devourer incursions. Others saw dangerous wildcards who might destabilize existing power structures. A few saw opportunities to acquire advanced military technology or tactical expertise. But all of them now understood something they had missed during humanity's initial evaluation. Being physically weak and being militarily ineffective were two completely different things. In their private quarters, Admiral Cross reviewed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Human diplomatic missions were reporting changed attitudes everywhere they went. Some positive, some negative, but all reflecting a new awareness of human capabilities. "The vote tomorrow," Sarah asked. "How do you think it will go?" "Does it matter?" Cross replied. "We've already proven what we needed to prove. Whether the Council accepts us or not, every species in the galaxy now knows that humans can be valuable allies or dangerous enemies." "And the Devourers?" Cross smiled grimly. "The Devourers are about to learn that their centuries of expansion are over, because now there's a species that doesn't just know how to fight them, we know how to kill them. All of them." She activated a classified display showing human fleets moving throughout the galaxy, hunting down devourer strongholds that had been considered too dangerous for conventional forces to engage. "The Ironclad Legion isn't just a military unit," Cross explained. "It's a promise, a guarantee that humanity will never again be dismissed as weak, and that any threat to human civilization will be met with whatever level of response is necessary to eliminate it." Sarah studied the fleet movements, and if other species decide we're the threat, then they'll learn the same lesson the Devourers did, Cross replied simply. That underestimating humans is the last mistake an enemy ever makes. The galaxy had changed. The small, weak species that had been dismissed as irrelevant had proven they were perhaps the most dangerous civilization to ever achieve spaceflight. Not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they understood something that no other species had fully grasped. In a universe full of threats, the most important skill wasn't the ability to win. It was the ability to ensure that your enemies lost. And humans had been perfecting that skill for their entire history.